Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, crypto nerds of all ages, everyone out in the Algo fam, who is looking out for you? Who is looking out for the developer right now? Who's looking out for the future? Right now, we're going to talk to Mike from Algofoundry. He is the CTO, and he's going to give us some insights.
Now tuned in to the KryptoNurd podcast, brought to you by Citrus and Algofund. Be sure to like and subscribe.
Mike, welcome. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad you joined us here today. How are you doing so far?
So far, so good. It's 7 p.m. at night in Singapore, so just got through a really busy work day, but hanging in there.
I appreciate you wrapping up with us. It is 6:15, 6:20 a.m. here for me in Central Time Zone. So we are the two opposite ends of the spectrum. So I'm starting off, you're wrapping it up. And through the beauty of the internet, though, we get to meet in this virtual space. So thanks for stopping by the KryptoNurd studio. And I'd really like to just kind of dive in and just get a very, very brief background of yourself, and then talk about
Okay.
Algofoundry and some of the projects that you're working on and initiatives, because it's really insightful.
All right, great. Yeah, so I mean, basically, I'm a old-time computer scientist. I've been in the industry, in the IT industry for many years, about 30 years or so. Lived all over the world, from the United States to Central and South America, Russia, Israel, China, now Singapore, and worked in all kinds of industries, from Fortune 500 companies to banks to startups. So pretty much seen every type of the technology that's out there over the years, and now focusing my efforts on trying to make an impact in the crypto space.
Excellent. So Algofoundry. Now that we know that you've been around for a long time, how long has Algofoundry been around? How did you come to participate? And give us a little bit of background there, if you would.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it's a funny story actually, to be honest. So, um, I started a business here in Singapore in 2018, and it's a sort of a venture studio in crypto space and blockchain. But it wasn't focused on Algorand. It was focused on multi-chain, and it still exists. And one of our first customers actually ended up being someone that was very, very into Algorand, right at the sort of as it came onto mainnet in late 2019. He approached us to build a bunch of projects for him. So we had to do a lot of research about what Algorand was. And back then, the teal and AVMs were very, very immature and couldn't do a lot of features. Like, for example, you couldn't do function calls and things like this. So it was actually quite challenging to work with, and we ended up building 6 or 7 projects. And just so happened chance we're in Singapore, and Algorand Foundation is also in Singapore. It's registered in Singapore.
Yeah.
And we got introduced to them, to the guys here in the Singapore office, and they were surprised to find out that we had built all these projects, and that we were the people behind them. And we had never asked for a grant or asked for any kind of money from the foundation, or done any of the traditional things that were happening in the Algorand ecosystem. So that's where the dialogue started. One of the things that was identified to us back then was finding actually good developers in the Algorand space was quite challenging. And we had actually developed an internal training program for our own developers to work with the technology. And so we started this idea of Algofoundry being a venture studio and educational partner of the Algorand Foundation, to bring a real curriculum out there, train some devs, get some community relationship and development going, as well as being a venture studio to sort of support some of the projects that the Algorand Foundation wanted to make sure would actually hit mainnets and provide not only development but all the other services that are required to successfully launch a project. And so that started Algofoundry, and that's started in February of this year. So it's only been around about 8 months.
Yeah. It seems like you've accomplished quite a bit in a short amount of time, but I want to backtrack just a little bit to your previous experience. So one of the wonderful things about Algorand, and I've heard this time and time again and actually experienced this myself, because I was associated with a project that had been building on Algorand and yet had no contact with the foundation or Algorand Tech themselves. And I'm just curious, that feeling of kind of that open source, accessibility. How has that
Sure.
impacted the Algorand ecosystem and growth? Is that a double-edged
Um,
sword? Is it all positive? What's your take on that?
well, to be honest with you, I think the open source. I'm generally in favor of open source, right? So just as a general principle, if you were to ask me in any given situation, I would not seek IP protection because I feel like execution is actually the most important part of running an operating business and not ideas. Um, so generally speaking, I'm in favor of it. But in terms of Algorand in specific, I found it's not really a big impact because of the language and the technology behind Algorand. So most people are writing in PyTeal and or Teal. Some people are adopting Reach. But
Right.
when it comes to Teal and PyTeal, like even if you had the source code for something, like for example, I was lucky enough to see the development relations team in Algorand produce some hacks to get around some of the storage problems. Uh, you have the source code, right? And so it's 7,000 of lines of beautifully linted assembly language teal code. Good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
like that's not, it doesn't. It's not like Solidity where someone can just sort of take a project and then sort of change 100 lines and then you've got
Yeah.
this new thing. It's a lot harder to do when it comes to teal. So
It's not
it
quite
hasn't had the
copy and
impact.
paste or plug and play that scenario wise.
Correct. Yeah.
So you really are the background. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So you came on, you
Yeah.
found out like, okay, there's this fantastic, Algorand is here, but
Mm,
there's nothing
mm,
really to train and bring new devs, and beyond our
mm.
initial 6 projects, there's it's difficult to grow, and so you kind of stepped into
Yeah.
that role.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the thing about it is that this is about philosophy, right? So
Hmm.
uh, from me, I always take a long view on the things that I'm doing. So if I'm going to be involved in crypto, what do I think crypto is going to look like in 10 years?
Hmm.
And we should be going in that direction. At least we shouldn't be doing things that are counter to that 10-year vision or prediction, right? So
Right.
in my view, there's a lot of people that look at crypto traditionally as a sort of a disruptor to traditional banking and traditional systems, and I label these people as anarchists. And there's nothing wrong with being an anarchist. Don't get me wrong. It's not a negative term, or at least not coming from me. But
Yeah.
if you really believe that crypto is going to be alive and well and not adopted by governmental and institutional players in 10 years from now, I just don't share that vision with you. So I think it's going to be institutional and governmental. It's going to be much more regulated. And if you believe that, then you should be working on a chain that is geared towards institutional governmental adoption.
Hmm.
That's my thesis. I've looked at all the chains, and I actually believe that Algorand is one of the few that actually meets the criteria that's required for that.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why we're committed to Algorand. Now, that being said, it hasn't been a soft, puppies, rainbows, and butterflies experience getting to where we are. A lot of the technology has changed in Algorand, and it changes very rapidly. It sometimes obsoletes or invalidates pieces of work that you've done in order to
Hmm.
circumvent some constraints. That's what we ran into right away. So, for example, when we got involved, the wallets could only interact with 10 maximum ASAs or contracts, right?
Yeah.
So one account could only do that. So we actually spent 3 months writing our own wallet that managed multiple accounts that it would create for you and rekey in the background so that it would just work like MetaMask, and you don't even know these constraints exist.
So just
And the
stitched them
moment that
together essentially, but now
right,
it doesn't.
but
Now you don't even
but
need that.
right, and then
Oh,
we released it, and literally 2 weeks later, they removed the constraints. Like this has
yeah.
been a lot of our experience, right, of like developing on Algorand. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where and some people are not going to take it positively, but it's one of those things that you get into a situation, and and you almost like the thing better because of the strife and the struggle and the the hard work that you've had to put in. It doesn't come easy, so you have
Yeah.
this you grow this fondness for everything that you've built because of that effort. Right?
I can identify with that. It's part of the journey and the process and the challenge, and once you've overcome some of those challenges, it really produces a sense of ownership. And there
Yeah.
are so many people in the ecosystem right now that have that shared ownership of Algorand's journey because their little piece of the puzzle, they helped solve that portion of it for whatever problem
Yeah.
it was that they encountered.
Right.
And speaking of problems, I think that's a good segue into
Mm.
some of the problems that Algofoundry is solving for.
Okay.
So, Algofoundry in its current state right now, how is it helping the developers community, and what's your involvement with that?
Right. Okay. So basically, from a developer's perspective, what we're trying to do is multifaceted, right? So on the very basic level, what we have is we have an actual curriculum that we've spent our time developing,
Hmm.
and this curriculum is actually three different classes or three different courses. One of them is what we call foundational knowledge. It's a foundational course, which basically starts at stuff like what is a blockchain, right? And
Real basic.
what is Algorand and what's an account and what does the infrastructure look like? And it even goes as far as like, okay, if you're going to work inside the blockchain, you need to have this kind of tooling on your laptop or whatever the case is, right? So it's just really foundational stuff.
Okay.
The next one up is a development course. Now this gets pretty intense. This is usually takes 4 to 6 weeks to complete it.
Hmm.
And this goes through everything on Algorand. Also does Web3 wallet integration, like teal, PyTeal, smart contracts, rekeying. Like it's very intense. And then we have the ultimate course, which we call specialist, which is everything that's in dev plus concepts around security and how to avoid the pitfalls. It's immersive so that you get one-on-one time with our trainers and so on and so forth, right? So these are the basic things that we've done.
Hmm.
Now, our strategy behind that is also then as a part of a greater good that we see, that again, go back to philosophy, but the idea is that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so we want
Absolutely.
the boats of Algorand to rise, right? And so we don't see this curriculum as like a huge, like we've got to make money on this so much. We do charge for it, there's a value,
Hmm.
but we have special programs with other people in the ecosystem that are also doing educational things. Like for example, there's an accelerator in Miami called Rocker
Hmm.
that is doing their own learning system. They're leveraging some of our content in their learning system. We've also tried to get it into universities. So the Algorand Foundation has got a program called ACE,
Hmm.
where they're working with different universities. We're doing our own similar thing to ACE. We've gone into universities in Morocco, like the University of Marrakesh. They're actually adopting our curriculum as part of their official coursework towards a degree. We're doing a similar thing in Vietnam pretty soon. We're going to be doing it into Kazakhstan. There's a couple of universities we're working with all over the world to try and develop this program and get the curriculum out to as many people as humanly possible, right?
Wow. What
Yeah,
about
so
what
this is
about precursors or prerequisites for that very first class? If there's somebody who's watching today and they're
sure.
thinking like, I want to start coding, what do I need to know already? What's the
Sure.
base level knowledge you're expecting?
Right. So I mean, basically, if you've never coded before, this is not the place to start. I would say it would be very hard to code an Algorand ecosystem for somebody who doesn't have any knowledge in coding. Typically, we see people that have got two types of people do very well so far in our experience. The first type is people that are really a lot of knowledge in the front end. So they're very strong in JavaScript, React, Next.js world, and they've touched some of the concepts around general blockchain stuff, maybe on Ethereum or something like this. And this is sort of a continuing education. Usually do very well.
Right.
The other type of people we see doing very well, coincidentally, is more the old time programmers like myself that grew up in the age where you had to do embedded systems where you were coding for 8086s, or we're doing some kind of demos in the 386 era where you have a lot of assembly language knowledge. So
Hmm.
people that are working in language like LLVM or these kind of things typically do very well as well.
What's interesting is what's old is new again, and what becomes
Mm.
relevant again,
Yeah,
because what we're working in now is still relatively young, as
yeah,
an industry, as a languages, and so some of those skills that you picked up early on in your career are applicable again because now it's a new language,
yeah,
obviously new scenario, but the same base
yeah.
skills is still required. And it sounds like somebody who's got some Web 2 skills, and some curiosity and some base level knowledge of how blockchain works, would
Mm.
tend to do very well here. And it's
Yeah,
interesting you brought up the Miami Accelerator. That program has been fantastic. We've seen lots of great projects come out of there.
yeah, yeah.
And I didn't realize the involvement that you had at the university level. It's interesting to hear that. Um, when
Mm.
when that is incorporated, do they let you know? Are they partnering, collaborating, or are they going in and like just purchasing access and then you know?
Oh no, no, yeah, no, no. It's a collaboration. So I mean, I actually flew out to Morocco myself. I was in
Uh,
Marrakesh for a week. Trained the professors and the teaching assistants.
mhm,
We customized the curriculum a little bit to whatever their requirements are.
sure.
And then for every student that takes the module, we also offer professional certification as at no cost to the student as an addition to their university degree. So,
Yeah. Now, I imagine that this certification is something that, as you grow, you're really hoping will hold some weight, and people will recognize it and say, "Oh, you have this certification.
mm,
This means something now." How many students have you
yeah.
graduated? How many
Yeah.
certificates are out there now in the wild?
Yeah. So we started in February with the company, but our curriculum was only ready, I think, in the middle of May. So we've only been doing the actual training part for 5 to 6 months.
Hmm.
So far, 53 people have graduated. So,
All right, that's 53 more than we had before. So fantastic
yeah,
news.
yeah, we get in there.
So
Yeah, look, yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so I mean,
Mm,
part of what you're doing is really a service to the community, but you're still a
mm,
business as well. Does
mm,
some of this
yeah.
tie into the accelerator business specifically? Are you producing devs? Do you place them in roles?
Mm,
And is that
mm.
is that to help some of the projects that you're associated with, or are these freelancers who are going out and
Mm.
finding their own projects?
Yeah, look, I mean, okay, so as I said, it's a multifaceted and long-term approach, right? So the first thing, obviously, is just to get more devs out there, and allow people who are out there to be certified to a standard which is recognized as, like, at least the space knowledge, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the hope for the certification. So after that, what do we do with these devs? That's a good question, right? So obviously, placement programs, when it comes to education, placement programs are very important. We are working with Rocker again. Rocker is making a job board as part of the educational push.
Hmm.
Um, all the graduates, doesn't matter which channel they came from, will be listed there. We're also working with a couple of people in Europe that are blockchain job boards for these kind of placements as well.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, the other part of Algofoundry is actually a venture studio, and the venture studio builds applications that we and the Algorand Foundation recognize as gaps within the actual ecosystem. And as you would imagine, that takes quite a lot of manpower and talent.
Yeah.
So we are actually consuming some of the devs as well. And yeah, obviously we were happy to help out with any of the projects that are coming out of the accelerator. So this is also now segueing into what else does Algo Foundry do for the development community, right?
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so I mean, basically, our strategies there is also then to build out tooling and other things that are required and missing in the ecosystem. So, for example, one of the things that we're very excited about upcoming is a product that we're actually co-developing with Kudelski Security, which is a major security firm in general in the cybersecurity space, but also in the Algorand community.
Hmm.
And this tool is called Impulse, and what it does is basically it does a real time monitoring solution for the blockchain based on threat assessment, and it can pick up any anomalous, what they call invariant or unexpected behavior on any of the protocols it's monitoring in real time on the same block it happens. And through some of the things that we're developing in smart contracts, can deploy countermeasures to stop exploits and hacks before they actually take down protocols. So, for example, some of the countermeasures we've already worked on are things like blacklisting, whitelisting, rate limiting certain transactions, setting min and max, time sinks. So, for example, if some protocol has got some function to remove currency out of it, cryptocurrency out of it, that might be time synced to, let's say, a time lock to, let's say, 20 seconds, and it only occurs if there's no exploit detected within that 20 seconds. So things like this. The exciting part about that impulse, not only is it great for security, but the language, it has its own sort of what they call a DSL, a description language that is sort of an expect if then else type of syntax. So, hey, if you see this happen, then it should only be under that condition or whatever, right? It's this kind of language. So that language can actually be inferred from development projects. Like, for example, if you're using Reach, that can be inferred from annotations. If you're using Beaker, that can be inferred also from annotations. And so that language can then also, through using this tooling, be used for unit testing smart contracts and other things, right? So these are things we're going to release open source to the development community. These security countermeasures that can be added to smart contracts, we're going to release as best practices open source to the community to try and, as I said, rise the tide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was called Impulse, I think you said, right?
Impulse, correct.
That's fantastic. And I caught that was going to be open source out to the community as well.
Yeah, the development, the free tier will be, yes, correct. There will be additional services because Kudelski does, active monitoring. They have a security operations center in Switzerland as well as in Arizona with real security people that are watching, the things, and they have a forensic lab. And if you want all that, obviously that's a higher tier that they will charge service charges on top of this.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, Algofoundry has been flying relatively under the radar. I suppose, right? You started in February. You haven't been around for that long in the grand scheme of things, but like blockchain, everything moves very quickly. So you released your first, courses in May, I think you said, beginning of summer. Yep.
Yeah,
okay,
correct,
got it. Since then, 53 graduates, and you're already working on other projects, sort of behind the scenes and giving back to the community. How has the relationship with the foundation helped the growth and accessibility and introductions, that sort of thing? What's the relationship been like there?
Well, it's been pretty good. So just to be clear, the Algofoundry is actually partly owned by the foundation. So it's a pretty good relationship. Actually, the Singapore team out of the foundation works out of the Algofoundry office in Singapore.
Yeah.
So we have pretty close relationship. I will say that in terms of helping getting out there into the community, it's it's been a little bit challenging. I think the developer relationship or the dev roles, what they call it in Foundation Inc. Up until before John Woods came on board, wasn't that great. It was a little bit hard to work through those channels, but it's improved a lot since the new leadership has come in
and that wasn't even that long ago, really.
It's 3 months ago. Yeah, something like this. So I mean, it's getting better every day, and I will tell you, now that we have John Woods, the CTO, on board, there's actually someone that's looking at like dev tooling and what the experience for developers in the community is, of builders is like, and that just didn't exist before. So we're generally bullish about it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Last question here, and then I'll see if there's anything else we can wrap up with. But a day in the life. Are you interacting with some of these accelerator type programs or the education, or are you working on collaborations? What does your day-to-day role look like right now as part of the the ecosystem there?
Right. Well, I mean, every day is different, right?
Yeah, it's
Like a
always an
snowflake.
adventure.
Yeah, I mean, basically, from my perspective, I oversee all the technical parts of it. So definitely planning out things for the Foundry in terms of curriculum development, in terms of partnerships that are people using the curriculum. On the venture studio side, we have collaborated with or graduated our first protocol that came through that Foundry venture studio, which is called Algorand. It's a decentralized options vault. So there's a lot of planning and product iteration there. Our team was also the one that developed the Messina bridge that's just gone live. So there's a lot of product planning iteration there.
Right.
We've also developed, other stuff that's gaps in the community. Like for example, I challenge you to tell me what is the oracle, the best oracle on Algorand that's on mainnet right now. The answer is there isn't one. So we've developed an oracle called that Foundry Oracle that's coming live. It's already doing BTC, ETH, and ALGO USD pricing. We'll do randomness and other things, commodities as well. We have developed a thing called the Algofoundry Safe, which is a Gnosis safe multi-sig smart contract wallet that allows you to basically use ledgers and have basically multi-sig functionality to DeFi, as well as work groups and workflows and allowances and things like this that don't exist. This is also very good. So I mean, there's a lot of things that are being planned out and architected. A lot of delivery of stuff. There's recruiting. There's curriculum building, partnerships. I mean, it's a nonstop. I mean, I pretty much start at 8 a.m. and finish
Keep
at
going.
midnight. And yep.
All right. I know I told you that was going to be the last question, but I've got one more. So,
Sure.
when you come up for air, you interact with a lot of folks and a lot of folks behind the scenes, so to speak. What other
Sure.
projects are you really intrigued with and watching right now?
On Algorand space only.
It could be anywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I mean, we're always trying to find what the sort of the cutting edge of trends are. At the moment, we're looking specifically at some of the most interesting multi-chain stuff because of the Messina bridge that we built. One of the use cases that we really like is extending this NFT marketplace idea, which is mostly in GameFi and other art. One of our projects, which also includes Algorand, in that case would be the ability to, for example, use an NFT as collateral as a loan, but your NFT might be on Algorand and you're loaning money on Ethereum. So it's cross-chain credit instead of cross-chain tokens. We're also working with a new protocol that's on Aptos that just launched 2 days ago. It's called Concordia, which is a leverage, sort of a leverage credit system. So you put in some kind of cryptocurrency, you can leverage it and loan it, and it's also doing cross-chain, so you can basically hold your collateral on one chain and have credit on other chains. Stuff like this is pretty interesting, I'd say.
I would say so. The ability to incorporate those cross chains and kind of centralize it, to bring it all so it's in one usable interface there is very valuable for growing. And as you said earlier, rising tides float all ships.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a good sentiment to leave this on. Mike, I appreciate you spending some time with me. I know it's the end of your day. I know it's probably a never-ending churn of interactions and iterations, and I just really appreciate you kind of expanding on what's going on right now, because the community needs to know a little bit more about Algofoundry. So
yeah, appreciate the time. Thank you a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone out there for watching, and as always, I am your crypto nerd.
you.